Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans. Welcome. That was a new one. Well, you not saw that coming. You're used to the countdown, but we had something new for you. That's how we're going to start all of these live shows from now on. Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, live, otherwise known as the Rum Shot Diaries. I'm Ashel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. And of course, with me as ever, how you doing, Santoki?
Boy, I poured myself a double today, man. Got a nice little rum and ginger beer. It's been one of those days, Mash. Firstly, how are you feeling, man? Because you've obviously sacrificed your health for West Indies cricket, getting up 4 a.m., soldiering on every single day. How are you feeling, Mash?
Listen, that whole test match has mashed me up, you know. For those who are in on the live, big up yourselves. Obviously, I can see you all saying hi and stuff, but you just missed me yawning to... Wasn't even talking to Dino and sang Tokyo Fair. I was just yawning to them. But I'm grateful, you know, because it's Thursday today. So I've got 3 days of actual proper sleep before I have to do it all over again for the second test.
But yeah, we're joined by a recognizable face. Regular viewers will recognize him. His social media is in the handle there, at Quick Dino. Dino, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm good, man. Like Marshall, I did throw my whole sleep cycle off. In the Caribbean, it's going to be, like 1 a.m. it starts, or 12:30 it starts. So, I tried to do that and mix it up. And it was difficult. It literally gave me a headache. But we're back. And we, like Marshall says, we move. And I didn't forget, you said rum and ginger beer, man. That sounds delicious. I got to try that soon.
But for those who haven't been paying attention for the last 5 days, don't know where you've been, but Sri Lanka, 386 runs in the first innings. West Indies responded with 230. Sri Lanka then put on some quick runs, 191 for 4 declared, leaving us, I can't remember what we had to chase. I think it was 380 odd.
Well, you know what? We can't even run through the scores. Mash, Dino, we were 18 for 6. The lowest ever. That was the lowest ever score we've lost 6 wickets for in the history of West Indian cricket, going back to whenever we start playing Test cricket in the history. That's the lowest we've ever lost 6 wickets. 18 for 6.
Yeah,
Dino,
I blame you guys. I blame you guys for interviewing the batting coach just before this test match.
Yeah, do you know what? We sabotaged his whole career, you know.
Oh, that must be tough.
But I mean, we're going to get into it. We are going to get into that. I don't think we should get into the 18 for 6 yet because we're going to try and break this all down. But perversely, the best day for West Indies of the 5-day series is actually today. Because to be honest, and I mean, we'll get round to it again when we try and break it all down, but to go from 18 for 6 to 160 all out is actually quite impressive. And like the shambles that unfolded to get to 18 to 6. If you had said to me, yeah, but we'll end up 160 all out, I would have been like, no way. Nobody would ever have bet on that being the case. So but there's that in itself is a big problem because it raises a whole myriad of questions about, well, we'll get into it. But big up everyone who's in the live, just throw out a few comments there. Shakes, big up Shakes, great to see you again, Shakes, and I guess great to see us. So big up Shakes. I know loads you were saying and I didn't throw the comments in, but let's get straight into it. I mean, we've got a plan of how we wanted to do this, but I don't even know if this is the best way to do it. But actually, yeah, before we get into the categories, let's do it this way. Let's start with this as the first talking point. Was this match won at the toss? I'm going to throw that as our first talking point. If West Indies had won the toss and batted, would we have still lost the test match? Obviously, it's all hypotheticals, but based on what you've seen over the last 5 days, do you think we would have lost anyway, even if we won the toss? I'll throw that out first.
I think 100% we would have lost even if we batted first. Obviously, I know in the last episode, Dino said you need to bat first as a pitch that deteriorates, put up a big score first. But I think the quality of batting we saw on show, if we batted first, Mash, you can't tell me the same batters would have put up 300 plus, even if they had to go first, regardless of how good the pitch was. They just couldn't, particularly the spinners, they just couldn't navigate them. So I think it would have been the same story. We might have put up a bigger score, 200, 220 in the first innings if we batted first, but it would have led to the same result, in my opinion.
Dino, any disagreements?
Whoever everyone bats first there on that pitch, right? For obvious reasons, like we mentioned before. So if you won the toss, you would have bat first. The big thing is batting second. And yes, spin came on early on, but you could have still come close. As long as you come close to that first inning score, you're in the game in that scenario, right? So that's all we wanted as West Indies. It's not ideal batting second, but you get to see how the pitch plays. And, you would have thought the batsman would take a page out of the Sri Lankans' book. That's what you would have hoped for, and to get past maybe a 350 or somewhere there close to the score to keep the game competitive. And just for the breakdown of the game, there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. But I think if you break down each inning, there's 4 innings. I think there's a lot of stuff that happen in between that, people are frustrated about and get emotional about. And, some people can't unpack it properly, but you have to be level-headed about it. And if you break down each 4 innings, I think you will see where, the game shifted. Yeah.
Well,
but also,
go,
Santoki. I was going to say the Sri Lankan first innings score is a substantial score, 386, but it didn't take the game away. Particularly if you look, they lost the last 5 wickets for 30 runs or 50 runs or something. So the momentum, West Indies did have some momentum coming into bat in the first innings, just because of the manner of how they kind of wrapped up Sri Lankan innings. And I think Sri Lanka would have been disappointed at not having scored 400 plus. So there was something to build on. But as I said, the quality of the batting, regardless of if we batted first, I think it just wouldn't have held up.
Well, let's take, and Dino's kind of said there's different elements as you break it all down. So let's get into the first element, actually, and we're already going off script of what I said we were actually going to do. So, fellas, those categories I told you, we'll deal with those at the end, actually. Maybe let's just talk through things first. And by the way, people, I always forget to say, if you're watching, press that like button, press that subscribe button. Anybody you know who would enjoy watching this, send them the link and tell them to get involved. Remember, this isn't us as you must listen to us. This show is just as much yours as it is us being the host of it. So get involved, dash in your comments, etc. But first things first, actually, and the one thing that I think has been a bit overplayed, but still needs discussion. Before the test match, we did a live talking about who should get in the squad and just generally about the tour, kind of like a preview of the tour. Santoki, to your credit, you said that you thought both Mayers and Chase would play. I think Dino and I said that we thought that Hope would come in at number 4 and that it would be between Chase and Mayers. Let's talk selection first. Was anyone surprised to see, because I think there were 3 big talking points for me. Gabriel was chosen as the bowler. As the main, we only ever had one strike bowler, and it was Gabriel who was chosen in the end. Chase and Mayers both got in, and Hope didn't get a play. Everybody else kind of wrote itself. We expected everyone else to play who played. What were your feelings on the selected 11?
I'll go in then. Yeah. I just, it's surprising that Hope didn't start. That's it. You just think that this was the tour for him to actually come back in straight into the team. Going into that, that's a big surprise. Again, surprised that they went with 3 spinners. That's a surprise for West Indies that they lean in the direction of 3, but it's probably what was needed. And Shannon as the pick, Shannon as the pacer with Holder. They managed to get Myers in as a batsman, and Shannon as the pick. I think, that you could understand that. Fast bowlers get rotated in test series, especially based on fitness, based on conditions. So don't be surprised you see that Jason Holder might not play last game. We don't know how much fast bowling takes out of a bowler, especially in tests, especially these modern days, right, with these guys that we have. So don't be surprised that you see 2 new fast bowlers. So, those things were up in the air. No really big surprises, but, Marshall, you covered it all, really. We covered most of the scenarios here, right?
Santoki, as much as you said Mayers and Chase, you thought they'd be in, were you surprised to see Hope out? Obviously, he played anyway, which we'll get to, but were you surprised to see him originally out of the team?
No, to be fair, I would have been surprised if he was included in the team, just because I thought, like we'd said on the last show, it was sort of head-to-head between Chase and Hope realistically, and I just thought Chase's ability to firstly spin bowl and his ability against spin in the subcontinent meant I thought he would get the edge. The one surprise for me would be Shannon Gabriel. As Dino said, you see most teams when they go to particularly Sri Lanka, they rotate their fast bowlers. So like Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson never played together in Sri Lanka, for instance. The one thing I would say would be we would know that in the second innings, as the pitch deteriorated, the fast bowler would be ineffective. So what Gabriel bowled 4 or 5 overs in the second innings. So on that precedent, maybe you've gone with Roach because Roach can bat a bit more. So you'd have that kind of extra security, knowing Gabriel was never going to be able to bat and he would be ineffective as the pitch deteriorated. So that would be the one criticism, but I don't think Gabriel will play in the second test. They'll go for Seals or Roach.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they choose to go with it. Now, the reason why I asked about the selection is because, as ever, and I know I should avoid them. I know I should stay away from Facebook groups because there's so many fools in those groups. But that's if you want to find West Indian fans, that's almost where you have to go. And the kind of knee-jerk reaction in the West Indies to any selection, we saw it in the World Cup, is where's this guy? Why is that guy playing? Why isn't? And I just saw a lot of people saying, how comes Roach and Seals weren't picked? And I couldn't get my head round that because we're in Sri Lankan conditions. I always say, look at the home side, right? Sri Lanka packed their team with spinners upon spinners upon spinners upon spinners. So why on earth would West Indian fans then, so there's, hold on, before I continue. So a couple of people in the chat saying, who uses Facebook? Listen, listen, if you want to find the real West Indian uncles, they're all on Facebook. There's some Facebook groups, right, which are called like Rally Round the West Indies or whatever it's called, and there's like over 100,000 people in those groups. That's where all the uncles are, because if you think about it, West Indian fandom isn't a young person's thing anymore. Certainly not in the diaspora, right? But the older generation who actually saw us once be good, they don't know how to use. They're not on Twitter. They're not on Snapchat. They're not on Instagram. They're on Facebook. That's where they are. But anyways, what they were saying, and to kind of wrap up that point, is they were all shocked that Seals and Roach didn't play, and I just don't understand this mentality of. Why would you look at the home side who are used to their conditions? They've packed the team with spinners, and their attitude was our strength is pace bowling, so play pace bowling. I almost don't want to ask you two about it, but where do you stand on that kind of argument of play to your strengths irrespective of what the conditions are saying?
No, you can't. I mean, for instance, what would be the point of playing Jaden Seals? He'd be bowling 25, 26 overs on toiling away on that kind of pitch. It wouldn't be. It's good for him to be around the test side on this tour, but you wouldn't throw him in like that. You realistically, even though spin isn't one of our stronger suits, you have to play to the conditions. So for me, it always had to be one strike bowler. So it was always going to be Gabriel or Roach. I never really thought Seals would come into it. I think he's just there for the experience. And as we referenced on the last show, he's in the Lanka Premier League, so he'll be staying on anyway to play in T20 cricket. So for me, it makes no sense to say you're going to stack the team with fast bowlers because it'd be a waste of their time and also risking injury with them toiling away like that for no real reason.
Dino, before I come to you, so James Allen says you have to get the balance, but Roach doesn't even have the record in Asia to justify selection, which was what my issue always was about going with Roach. I get it for experience. I get it because he's technically the best bowler, but just the record... I now see Kimar primarily as a home conditions bowler, or he plays somewhere where it swings a bit like England. I'm not convinced that you always play Roach away from home, certainly in Asia anymore. But it's worth mentioning that the Sri Lankan two pacers, Chamira and Lakmal, they bowled a combination of, I think, 16 to 18 overs in the whole match. So this is why I think it's just worth stressing to any West Indian fans who are like, where's Roach and Seals? I don't see where they're coming from with that. But Dino, come in.
Yeah, I like the question and that you mentioned Facebook and those communities because it's a really generic surface level question and it's a kind of question you see out there in the West Indies cricket world, in the West Indies online world. So, that's why this show is important to dig into a little bit deeper and show you why it didn't make sense for extra pacer. It just made no sense. I always say horses for courses. All right, look at the game and what, like you said, 16 overs from the Sri Lankan Pacers. I'm not sure how many from ours, but what was the role of Pacers? Get wickets at the top and then attack batsmen in short bursts when you can, right? Did we do that effectively in the innings when we bowled, right? Especially in the second innings when Sri Lanka came to attack the bowling purposely, and you knew that was the plan. Were our Pacers used then when they would have been the most needed in that situation, and were they effective at the top? And how much would you get out of them, right? So for the casual, I'll call that for the casual fan, it didn't make any sense playing an extra pacer. And we played who Shannon is the most aggressive one, who in the two roles that I just mentioned, you expect to get him to get something out of that. All right. But either way, in retrospect, I know people will say, well, Purmall should have just played, you know what I mean? Or we should even have another spinner in the ranks. Yeah.
Well, I'm actually glad you said that. And I want to leave that for the end, but I'll drop it in now for later discussion. But I'm playing Purmall in the next match, by the way. I don't know who I'm dropping yet, but I'm bringing in Purmall as the next person into. I'm not changing the batsman. I am because someone's going to get dropped. But we can talk about that later. So, anyways, Sri Lanka innings first day, I think they got to like 290 odd, I think, for 5 or something like that. I can't even remember now off the top of my head. But on the second day, we actually bowled well. We bowled well in patches on the first day, but on the second day, I think Santoki made reference to it at the top of the show. Sure, we took Sri Lanka's like last 5 or 6 wickets for less than 100 runs, and obviously Roston took 5 for 83. Jamel 3 for 87. He bowled much better on the second day than the first day. And Shannon, in fairness, took 2 for 69. Now, Roston's who I want to talk about, but I want to talk about spin in general, Dino, because you dropped a tweet, which I think I retweeted, or I can't remember what I did with it, but it was about what you noticed about, primarily, I think you were talking about Warwickon and Cornwall and how they struggled initially to adapt to what was required in Sri Lankan conditions. And I also think, and this is worth talking about, people have to remember, and Santoki, you tweeted this from our handle, we didn't get a warm-up game. I'm not saying that we would have played any better after having a warm-up game, but we did not get a game to adapt to conditions. And I just want to know how much you two think that mattered, or should Cornwall and Warwickon have been able to adapt a lot quicker? Dino, you come in first.
Warm-up games, absolutely crucial. Must have 2 or more if possible, honestly. Tours get reduced because of financial and now COVID situations, right? But it's absolutely a must. The warm-up game where they played in Coolidge, all right, maybe you would say similar to Sri Lanka conditions, but you come there and you play a match there, you bowl a few overs in a real match in their conditions after traveling, and you will see that you don't hit the ground running as a spinner. You understand? Even you bowl in the nets, you need that time in the middle as a spinner just to get everything feeling right. The Pacers will tell you that every venue that's the case, right? For spinners, especially now where they're expected to perform on tracks that suit them, they still needed the time. And I will just go into the point about Cornwall and Warwickon. What we notice about them is that they took 15 plus overs before they really, in the first inning, when they were bowling, before they came to terms with the lengths and the speed that they needed to bowl, right? That was very important for them. The reason Chase was successful is because as a tall, loopy spinner, he already had in his natural cavalry what he could have done on these conditions. Cornwall and Warwickon are accustomed to pushing the ball through, which they did for 15 plus overs, which they didn't adapt to the conditions well, and that's bowling first. So they would not have seen the Sri Lankans bowl. They would have come in and bowled first and would have been a bit flatter than usual. And that's what happened in the first innings. And that's why they racked up the tail, because when they took a breather, they came in, planned again, and they said, okay, guys, slow it up. pull back the length a bit, and then the wickets came. That was very evident.
Roston's 5 for 83. We have to talk on this, I'm going to throw it out there and then respectfully leave the conversation. If Santoki, before Dino jumped in with us on CCP, my views on this. I've been saying it for time now.
Yeah.
If Roston couldn't bowl, he would be nowhere near the West Indies team. My issue is he's not supposed to be in the team to bowl. He's supposed to be in the team to bat primarily. That is not a dig on Roston's 5 for 83. Well done, Roston. Brilliant. Test match fifer. Can't knock it. And he out-bowled Warwican and Cornwall from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
But if we are going to look at Roston and talk about how well he's bowled, why is he batting in the top 5 then? Because if people are going to keep coming at me and saying, yeah, but Roston bowled well, put him at number 8. Put him at number 8 and tell him he's the frontline spinner then, because I'm not having it. I'm not having someone in the top 5 contribute nothing with the bat, and then people dare to tell me, yeah, but look at what he's doing with the ball. There's a reason why our top 6 is so brittle when you lot are telling me about how well somebody in our top 6 bowls instead of how well they bat.
I think it's an unusual position because we obviously got Roston Chase, who's primarily there as a batsman, who essentially is our best spinner, and our frontline spinner Jimbo is a better batsman. So it's all confused at the moment. But I agree, Roston Chase, he should be in the team to bat, but he's not putting up the numbers with the bat at all. His averages are dreadful. His recent performances are dreadful. He's still kind of living off his performance against England like 2 years ago. So it's
nearly 3 years ago, We got
3 years ago, my gosh. So he's essentially living off that reputation with the bat. But like you said, that can't take away from his performance in the first innings. He took 5 top order wickets, crucial in that innings, especially when, as Dino alluded to, Warwican and Cornwall weren't settling in with the ball at that stage. So he essentially stopped Sri Lanka from running away with the game. But yeah, as a batsman, definitely he shouldn't be in the top 5.
Dino, Richard says, is Chase bowling too many overs? Could it be affecting his batting? The thing is, the Roston Chase thing is that could be a podcast episode in itself right now. What's going on with Roston? It's worth pointing out to people that Roston's test match average Roston's test match average is now 27, Like once upon a time it was like 36. My man's batting at number 4 and 5. 27.
Hold on, man. But we've said this numerous times. When we're picking batsmen who are averaging 23 in first class cricket, we can't cuss out Roston for his average.
Big up Roston, because 27 is good in that team. But
Let me come in on Roston, man. So now Myers is going to be a batsman now that bowls a bit, right? In that same argument, in that same bracket, is Cornwall a batsman? Look, the question will be now: can Cornwall play? Can Chase play in the Cornwall role, which is what you alluded to, Marshall, at him at 8, and can you drop Cornwall and play Chase, Warwican, Purmall? Right now, this can be a genuine consideration if. Seeing that being with the left-handed matchup, being that Chase versus the left-handers is going to be key in every single matchup, and you have to come prepared for that with no real backup, and then you're kind of relying on Purmall's variations if it's that, right? So that is a way to go. Can you play Chase as in the Cornwall position as a spinner? I think, why not do that, right? He's proven it already as a spinner. He's here in Sri Lanka with 5 top wickets. And you're going to rely on him anyway. Just attack with him. Sri Lanka know you're going to come anyway the next game with him. So just attack with him and have the right fields and the right captaincy for him if you put him in that role. All right? Unless they're happy to go with the same team and just the Pacers change. I know I threw it off a bit, but
we can, like I say, we're going to come back to, because loads of you are writing in the comments about the team. But I saw a comment. Where is it? Coolio says, I don't agree with this Roston cuss-out. He's the only guy who did anything really in T20 World Cup and CPL. Do you know what? So it's not actually a cuss-out. As you lot know how we do by now. Some things, like we're going to say the things that people might not necessarily want to hear because someone's got to say it, but we're going to try and say it with balance. And the reality is, because I always tweet it up, Roston's last 19 innings in Test match cricket since England 2020, he has scored 0 hundreds and 2 50s. That's just not good enough. For somebody who bats in the top 5, that's not good enough. If I went back before 2020, all the way back to, what was it? I think India at home after that England series. Like over the last 2.5 years, basically, Roston is basically averaging like 19. I think it might be 18 now. That's only in West Indies could we justify that. Only in West Indies could somebody present an argument to me why we should be justifying that. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm not saying anything that Roston himself wouldn't say and say, yeah, that's terrible. I got to do better than that. So to me, it's nothing controversial to say, nah, we can't be justifying that in tests. And it's got to be raised if we're going to be serious going forward. We can't continually justify underachievement with the bat, because then when you lot keep saying, how are we 18 for 6? Well, there is a reason why we're 18. There's a reason why we're 18 for 6. So that was the bowling effort. So Sri Lanka all out for 386, and then we came in to bat. Now let's talk about the first controversial decision with us batting. Who decided that Jermaine Blackwood should open? Once Solizano got the ricochet into his helmet and the concussion, I would love to know how we got. What was the think tank to say, let's open with Jermaine? So obviously Hope came in as a concussion sub. I just assumed Hope was going to open. Now, I'm not saying that's right for Hope to do. I'm not saying that. But I just assumed of all the players possible to open, you have two options. Josh Da Silva, because he's done it for Trinidad. I'm not saying we should have done it. I'm just saying players who have done it before. Josh has done it for Trinidad, as well as the emerging players. Did he do it for the emerging players? Can't remember, actually. Dino's not. Dino would have to remind me. But he's definitely done it for Trinidad when Dinesh was, Ramdin was in the team. He's opened up, right? And Hope has done it for both West Indies, and obviously Hope opens for the white ball West Indies team. Well, lads, talk to me about Jermaine Blackwood opening and that decision, because I still haven't got my head around it.
I reckon Simmons came into the dressing room and said, boy, Solizano took a lick to the head, so we're gonna have to get someone to open. Who does anyone want to volunteer? Everyone sort of looked around. After about 5 minutes, probably Blackwood said, I'm the vice captain. I'm just going to have to go out and do it, There was no logic behind it. I don't understand why Blackwood went out to open. His style doesn't suit opening, especially against the new ball. Like you said, Hope would have been the obvious choice, but I can see why they want to protect him at number 4, because he's kind of campaigned for that position, and he got into the squad based on his performances at 4 in the best versus best games. So I can see the logic there in protecting him, but then why wouldn't you go with Da Silva unless they thought Da Silva's a youngster, we need to protect him as well?
But before Dino comes in, Josh has, maybe I'm exaggerating, and everyone always says we're biased because Josh has been on the podcast, but you can't tell me that Josh doesn't have one of the better defensive techniques in the team. You can't tell me that. You cannot tell me that he doesn't have one of the better defensive techniques. And I just don't know. I know he's 23. I know he's young. Obviously, Hope's the more experienced option, but I just don't know why you didn't go with someone who's done it before, that at least is used to facing the new ball. And I actually think, Santoki, as much as you presented it as a joke, I actually think you're right. I actually think it came down to Blackwood saying, well, I'm the vice captain, so I better just put my hand up, because I cannot find cricket logic for it. Dino, can you throw any logic into this decision-making?
Yeah, guys, that's why you have me here. I'm going to break that decision down for you in terms of cricket. But I love the way that Santoki had that assume this movie moment, that with Blackwood, because I'll tell you what, that does happen, right? That those moments that they do happen is like, oh no, what are we going to do now? And then moment of silence and the hand goes up. All right, I'll do it for the team. Those things happen, right? But this decision happens because Hope is adamant about being at 4. The Silver would have just had to wicket keep a first full inning, and you get left with who is left. It's Blackwood, and I can tell you, I don't know if it was public information, but Blackwood during his time with the A team was at one point earmarked to open the batting, and he did go through training and prepare to open the batting for West Indies A team. So, he would have been in some way prepared for that, or going through the rigors of what an opening batsman does. Just some insight is just my inside information. I believe, that he believed it wasn't for him that he wanted to maintain his position in the middle order or fight for that position instead, right? So he would have gone through the basics of what an opening batsman would have needed to do. And that was the decision. De Silva has to keep. Hope is on his way back. He wants to stay at 4, so it's got to be Blackwood.
Yeah, and so apologies to everyone. I, of course, forgot that De Silva had been keeping. So that wasn't an option. And I wasn't even thinking straight. I was more focusing on the fact that Josh has done it for his franchise back home. So he has the experience. And to be honest, people, as Josh gets older and more experienced, and as we continue to never find an opener, it will not surprise me if one day for West Indies, Josh plays purely as a batsman and the wicket-keeping gloves are given to someone else, because I can see that potentially happening going forward. So yeah, Blackwood came out, but here's the joke. When we lost the first wicket, we were actually 46 for 1. And Blackwood and Craig, or Craig and Jermaine, had actually put together a rarely seen 40-plus opening stand from West Indian openers. So I was watching going, well, you know what? Blackwood's been all right here, opening up with Craig. I think, Jermaine went first, 46. I said, okay, cool. You know what, Jermaine, you've done your job. You're in an unfamiliar position. We move now. It's 46 for 1. Gentlemen, 46 for 1 became 100 for 6. Who wants to talk me through how we went from 46 for 1 to 100 for 6? Who was, so just to read the scorecard again, Bonner went for 1. I think a sharp one rolls on his glove. Hope went for 10. I can't even remember that. Was he caught a short leg or something?
Yeah.
Roston, boy, I don't even remember Roston's either. Jamel then came in as a night watchman and reviewed some mad decision. Something that would come out and he was just reviewing it. And at that point, it was like when Jamel got out, it was 86 for 5. And then Mayers had to come out anyway. So basically, the top 5 offered nothing. Go on, Santoki, you take it. 46 for 1 to 100 for 6.
But to be fair, we've seen this story so many times over the past 3 years. The top order not doing anything. Holder, Mayers, De Silva, Cornwall coming in and outplaying them, showing them how it's done. And to be honest, a lot of people tweeted us at the end of that day's play saying they'd expect the lower order to put up runs because there's an expectation now in the side that the top order just aren't up to scratch with the bat. And so many times we've seen the lower order put in the runs, dig in, and sort of show them how it's done. So for me, it wasn't a surprise to see Mayers and Holder put up the biggest partnership of the game. And then De Silva coming in, Jimbo as well, swinging as well. But it just sort of highlighted why aren't the specialist batsmen performing? Why are we relying on the lower order to kind of save us and put together respectable totals?
Now, let me put this stat up before I even come to Dino. So the average balls from Nutty Atty that West Indian batsmen face per innings: Bonner 98, Craig 76, Josh, who bats at 8, 64, Hope 58, Chase 56, Mayers 53, Blackwood 50, Holder 40. Listen, somebody needs to give me those equivalent stats for a good team, though, just so I can understand the disparity between what we have and what, like, I don't know, an India has or a New Zealand, etc., just so we can see how stark it is. But I think first things first, Dino, what I want to get into, and obviously Santoki spoke about how Mayers hit a good 45, Holder hit a 36, Raheem hit 39, Josh 15 not out of 94, which he got a bit of cussing for because people are like, why is Josh batting so low and then not scoring quite quickly? But I've got no issue with that right about now. Do you think these players, Dino, were... Okay, I'm going to throw a different set of criteria at you. Is it that they can't play spin? Is it that they were underprepared for Sri Lankan spin and conditions? Is it that they weren't playing the ball late? There were some dismissals I thought where I think players were going at it with hard hands. I think Roston's was one I can remember particularly. Certainly in the second innings, I saw lots of them playing for turn that wasn't even there. And then if you compare that, although we're not yet talking about the second innings, the thing that stood out for Bonner and De Silva today is I felt like they were doing nothing more complex than watching the ball onto the bat, like literally watching the ball. But it can't, surely, Dino, it's not that simple. I refuse to accept that it boiled down to players just not watching the ball onto the bat and playing late. Sure, Dino, don't tell me it was that simple. What did you make of the approach to spin?
All right, so we broke down the first inning on our bowling, right? So now we're on to the first inning of our batting. All right. What happened here? The top order, like you say, 46. What happened? What happened that we collapsed after that 46? All right. What happens in a test match is the information gets fed back from the batsmen who go in and they come out and they're saying, okay, this is how the wicket is playing, and you're seeing it for yourself. That is actually a big part of cricket. When you guys are getting out that information, it's not being fed back, and it actually creates more doubt and more panic within a dressing room. Right? So during those overs, you want someone to put their hand up, knuckle it down and say, okay, this is the approach. Now, what's disappointing about that, the second inning, is you've seen what the Sri Lankan batsmen have done in that conditions. And it's not, in between that time, it's not deteriorating that much or that fast that the conditions have drastically changed when you come to bat at that time. Right? So you already seen what they have done to you, and that actually influences the game. So we are not in a position where we are not prepared. You mentioned preparation. We're probably not prepared for that challenge. So we have to come in, and without a match, we have to come in and do it on the go. So you lose quick wickets to a Sri Lankan bowling unit that just routed England on this ground the last time they were here. England are notorious for not being able to play spin. So I always want to match West Indies team to the England team because I feel those are our rivals in cricket, and we should just, if we lose to everybody, we should just beat them home and away, right? And we should always match ourselves to England. So England went there and got demolished and from spin. So we knew what was coming. So were we prepared? No. And we knew what was coming. I know I heard myself say this already, right? So we got demolished to spin because the information didn't feed back. We were learning on the go, and that's why when there's breaks and a small partnership builds, the information starts to come back, and then the rest of the guys adapt to the situation. We are adapting. We are playing reactive cricket in these conditions. Sri Lanka are prepared for us already, knowing all our guys, knowing what field they want to who and which spinner matches up against who. And that's when they say in West Indies, captaincy, that's what we talk about, aggressive captaincy, right? That's what you don't see in West Indies when we're bowling to that level of teams who Sri Lanka know anyone comes here, we're going to spin them out, and we know how to do it. And we're prepared for it. Plan A, plan B, plan C. I know I went a bit long-winded, but that you're not going to hear this anywhere else. You're going to get these kind of descriptions of this is exactly what's happened here, inning by inning.
People, big up Dino. I'm so glad, Dino, for you to break it down like that. Fire. If I was in the chat, I'd be putting some fire emojis. Because we needed that breakdown, Dino. And something that you said, which made me want to ask you a question. You said Sri Lanka are ready for us, or were ready for us. They've got their set plans. But does that mean, are you by default saying we weren't prepared? Because I don't know if that's actually what you're saying per se.
No, I am saying that we're not prepared in every aspect. You know, it's a kind of a rush series. You mentioned the staff was at the same staff was at the World Cup. You know, that's what I'm saying. The team was not prepared. And like I mentioned before, we don't have the resources to be prepared in these environments right now. So, you know, we know we're playing catch-up.
I wonder why Cricket West Indies accepted it, because initially this series was meant to be played next year, and they put it in the calendar, but it was always going to be a squeeze because of the World Cup, and obviously with World Test Championship points on the line, I don't know what the benefits were for Cricket West Indies to reschedule it a year earlier rather than just wait a year and play it with more space to fit in warm-ups, have the coaching staff properly prepare them, because this is something you do need to prepare for because of the nature of the pitches. So the way we rushed into it, we almost set ourselves up to fail with that preparation. So it'd be interesting to find out what were the benefits for Cricket West Indies accepting the deal to play it now.
Sorry, I'm going to answer that, but I didn't even. Sorry, James, I didn't even see this. I only just scrolled up and saw. So thank you for the super chat. So you've said that there's only one West Indian left-handed batsman. Who was that? Mayers, whereas Sri Lanka with Dimuth, and is that the right spelling there? Did you think before I come to Santoki's point then about preparation? Do you see how we've just come off a World Cup with everyone talking about matchups? Dino, how much do you put attention to matchups in Test cricket then, in terms of number of left-handed batsmen, right-handed batsmen, and so on and so forth? How much stock do you place by that? Because it's over 5 days. Can you really? Are we talking matchups to that depth as well?
Sri Lanka are talking matchups to that level. They have matchups for their bowlers and their fielding positions for every guy on our team. That's what the matchups play, different roles in different formats. For us, our matchups would have said, okay, we know who is susceptible to pace and which bowlers we can attack with pace. That's an example of one of our matchups. Who do we bowl short to and put the catchers in? That's an example of our matchups. We would stick to the simple stuff, like if they are right-handed heavy, then do you need 2 off spinners then? But the quality of the left-handers is the concern. So everything is matchups for me. I will always say that, matchups and horses for courses, but you have to balance what you have in your hand, and you have to balance a bunch of other things that are happening other than matchups in terms of fitness and making sure guys get a run. Will Seals and Purmal play on this tour? When you talk about matchups, so I think personally that I would actually, for a long-term thing, to actually just play Purmal instead of Cornwall is a big risk, and you're going with Chase as your frontline off spinner.
So, sorry, Santoki, going back to your point. Sorry, remind me again.
I was saying Cricket West Indies accepted this tour earlier, so it's meant to be played next year. Yeah.
Who even knows, man? Who even knows? What is clear, and what we're all agreeing on, is that we weren't ready for it. But then I think it's Chatil put the comment that, remember though, only 2 of the players from the World Cup were in this Test squad. It was like all the rest were playing that best versus best preparation, which isn't someone who Medvis isn't in this chat, but Medvis has said we need to stop calling it best versus best. I think he's right. We need to call it average versus average.
It's a trial match. It's a trial match.
Yeah, just call it a trial match. No.
Also, it's like imagine you're in a test team. You've flown out to Sri Lanka. The coaches are all in the UAE, so the coaches aren't there. You use your coaches. You've got no preparation. You're just in the nets. Not in the nets is not preparing you for indoor nets as well because it's raining. Not preparing you for the conditions. Then suddenly you've got to go out and play Sri Lankan spin. It's never going to work, really.
Yeah, and I put it this way: I will be shocked if we're not better in the second test. I'm not saying we're going to win. I'm just saying that by default, I think this first game has been a glorified warm-up match, and I expect us to come stronger in the second test.
This is why I'm dubious about Purmal coming in, because he's essentially would be coming in with no preparation. Basically, what Warwican and Cornwall were doing in the first test. So, do you play Warwican and Cornwall in this test because they've got the momentum and experience of playing in the first test? Or do you put Purmal in a situation where he hasn't had any warm-up, any experience on the pitch? He hasn't played international cricket for some time now and expect him to perform in one test, basically. It's going to be a tricky one. But I can imagine they'll stick with Warwican and Cornwall for the second test, purely for those reasons.
Listen, Sri Lanka have already seen how the formula goes. Sri Lanka know already that even if we put up one partnership, the other 8 batsmen are going to collapse like dominoes, right? So... that's harsh, but that's what Sri Lanka are going to go with. So my thing is, spin is the way. Remember, 19 of the 20 wickets that fell to spin on for us. So obviously two of the however many we took, 14 went to Gabriel or whatever it might be. So it's just trial by spin again. But anyways, another talking point from our batting innings that I want us to just focus on. Josh De Silva at 8. So again, in these Facebook groups, I've seen lots of chat. This is why, though, people, I advise you all to avoid Facebook groups, because after Pakistan, the chat I saw was drop Josh De Silva from the team altogether because he had a bit of a lean run. But remember, Josh is young. He's 23. He's worth investing in. It's obvious he's worth investing in. So Josh comes good now in this particular test match, 15 not out of 94 and then 54 off like 170 odd or whatever it was that he batted. And the balls he batted is more important to me than the runs he made. Because for me in test cricket, your ability to occupy crease and show a test match temperament is the first thing I notice before I look to see how many runs you're making, right? So Josh has a test match temperament. Now, lots of people are saying we are wasting Josh De Silva by batting him at 8 because he's often coming in. Maybe it's him and Holder. Today it was him and Bonner. But usually it's him and Holder trying to do some salvage job. And then once Holder's out, if it's Holder, he's left with basically Gabriel and nobody. Now, obviously, even though people cussed off Josh was integral to us winning that test match against Pakistan. Him and Warwican and Roach and whoever Seals chased down for that test match win. So, big up Rachel, by the way. Love your analysis. Yeah, tune in all the time, Rachel. This isn't a one-off. This is what we're always like. But anyways, guys, where should Josh bat? Is he too low at 8? Should we get another wicket keeper so Josh can play as a pure batsman? If you were going to move Josh in the order, where would you move him to? Or is the fact that he's only 23 and learning his craft, do we just leave him where he is? Dino, you've seen Josh. For those who don't know, we always say it because you need to put respect on Dino's name. You work with the emerging players team that won in 2019. The one Super 50. You've seen Josh up close in that sense. Josh, for those who don't remember, top scored for the emerging team. Then he went on to play for Trinidad and averaged 50 for Trinidad the next season on. You've seen Josh up close. Where should he be batting for the West Indies? Dino, you go first.
Yeah, you broke it down there, Marshall. You gave a good insight into Josh there over recent times and his role in West Indies. So leave it as it is, simple. Leave it as it is. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't put additional pressure on him. Fix the problems that you need to fix. You need him as a wicketkeeper right now. You know, let's just say something happens. Who is the backup keeper? That's a huge question now. I mean, hope in the short term, yes, but who is your backup keeper? So let him, he's batting lower down to get some recovery in from test matches because West Indies tend to bowl a lot and for long periods, right? So he needs that recovery in as a young guy. You don't want to overwork him. If he's averaging high up, you know, honestly, in that role, you would take 30 runs from 100 balls every day of the week in that role. So as long as he can be fit enough to do that, that's where you leave him. Don't put the additional responsibilities. Let the batsmen do what they need to do. They got to put their hand up.
Santoki, agree?
You know what? We say this, but in the second innings, he was out batting anyway in the 10th over anyway. So coming in at number 8. Listen, he had his feet up in the back room and was out in the 10th over, man. Ridiculous. But you know what? I would consider... I agree it's good he's getting experience. I would consider swapping him with Mayers just because Mayers can sort of play the role like for England, like a Chris Wokes or a Rishpa Pant does for India, where he comes out with the tail end and he just swings, takes the attack away, kind of builds up some runs. It could work like that because Josh De Silva at the moment, if he continues to play this, he's almost doing like a Chanderpaul role where he's soaking up balls, but it's with the tail end. So you're not really building anything really. There's no one else to score. So moving him up, and if he can soak up the balls around the Holder and the Mayers, it will be more effective for the team, in my opinion. Because what's the point of soaking up balls at the moment when you've got Gabriel out there, for instance? No one's going to put up any runs. so for me, they could potentially swap him with Mayers, and that could readdress the balance of the side. I think it's something worth trying out.
I mean, I don't want us to become the guys who go, let's make changes for the sake of changes, but we will be the guys who say there's questions to be asked about certain things, and then it's up to the selectors. It's up to those who have the say to look at these things. So, anyways, 2:30 all out. We were well adrift, but we did pass the follow on, and we have to take those small mercies, you know. So Sri Lanka came back out, and Santoki, I'm going to come to you because you tweeted that I think you tweeted something like you were disappointed with Sri Lanka coming out there trying to make quick runs. And I think you tweeted something about you were disappointed with how Warwican and Cornwall bowled because we'd seen what Spin had already done to West Indies. And then let me just find the figures again. So Cornwall took 2 for 60. Warwican took 2 for 42 off 9. So he was going at like a lick of 4.6. Chase went at a lick of 4.6. And Cornwall went at 3.78. But you were just disappointed with our lack of restriction. Want to expand on it?
Yeah, I think it's something we've seen a few times in the England home tests, and Pakistan did it as well, where they come out expecting to score quickly and we just let them do it. I mean, Pakistan was scoring at 7 and over in one of the tests, and this time we let Sri Lanka score at 5 and over. Warwican and Cornwall, I know they got 2 wickets each, but the last 2 wickets were basically falling when Sri Lanka was swinging and not caring about losing wickets. So for me, there wasn't any restraint. And as you said, they didn't learn from conditions in the first innings, which was very disappointing. And that just sort of, because at that point, if we'd restricted Sri Lanka, it could have been a nervy finish to the game, but we let them run away with it, dictate the game essentially, set us a total and give them enough time to bowl us out. So for me, the lack of restraint and lack of clinical ability to take wickets was really disappointing from Warwican and Cornwall, considering they had the first innings to sort of find out about conditions and learn about what works, how to get drift and turn.
Dino, using you again, coming back to your kind of cricket experience, and possibly seeing situations like this for different teams in whatever particular setting, what goes wrong? Because Santoki makes a good point. What we saw, Santoki, we've seen this there's so many situations West Indies where I'm like, I've seen this so many times. And that particular situation where it's like, okay, opposition comes out, they want quick runs, and they just lick us all over the place.
Yeah, right. You remember the England one when it was like, Butler and Stokes came out to open, and they were just swinging
and they just licked. And I always watch it, and I'm always like, but how comes we can't do better?
And you know what? Someone said it in the comments. I think Richard Mutu said, we came out waiting for them to declare. And that's the sense you get from the team. You feel like they don't believe they're going to bowl the side out. It's just damage limitation. When are they going to declare and set us a total? And it just feels like the side's sort of given up when a team does come out and take the attack to them.
Before I come to you, Dino, so I just want to throw this comment up. So Carly says, to be fair, though, we haven't seen the Sri Lanka spinners bowling against West Indian batsmen who are attacking, so no comparisons made. Yes, but we're never going to see that. So, to be honest, I don't know what you want me to say.
That's exactly, let me jump in because that's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say, when was the last time we had a first inning lead on a test team, right? That we could come out and make some quick runs, right? To break down, look, we went first inning, second inning, we're into the third phase, and test cricket is all about phases. What happened when we had to bowl again? That is where, like I mentioned, the fast bowlers come in, and you could have opened with 2 fast bowlers and push them back with 3 rapid overs with that new ball and attack the batsmen, right? Did that happen? I don't know. Maybe I fell asleep. I don't know. But look, that is what you need in that position, to attack the batsmen, because they're going to come and play shots. We lost that battle, right? And then the spinners came in, and the Sri Lankans, having made 350 plus on that wicket against the same attack, they knew what the spinners were coming with, and they just adapted their game, used their feet to the spin, and scored rapidly and took on the spinners, who they always had the top of. Because, like I said, in the first inning bowling, we took too long to adapt. And now, in a completely different situation where you need to attack and restrict, they probably held up the ball a little too much, and the Sri Lankans came down the track to it, right? And so therefore, again, the Sri Lankans were in this position. They know that this is the game plan coming into this game. So being there, they're like, right, we know what we need to do. The risk is worth it. Had they get bowled out in that situation, runs on the board already. That's just to break down that inning.
And you know what? People always talk about the glory days of the 70s and 80s, but in this test, West Indies put up 390 runs between them across 2 innings. Chris Gayle hit at 3-3-3 in one innings on this very same pitch about 10 years ago. So that sort of puts into perspective how the batting has declined regionally. I think that sums it up very well.
We will never, in my lifetime, we're never going to see a batsman hit a... We're never going to see a triple century again.
Listen, man, wait till Solazano comes, yeah?
So Sri Lanka made their quick runs, and they, for some reason, they set 348 runs. That's how you know how important Bangladesh was, though, because have you ever watched West Indies and you've seen the team come out and you thought, but you lot could just declare now, face 2 balls and declare, and you'll win. And I was just, there was a point where I was watching Sri Lanka bat, and I was like, but what are you lot actually doing? You don't need 300 runs here. You can bowl us out for under 200. So, but whatever. They set 348 for whatever particular reason. And I just thought they were wasting time in doing that because there was nobody who had a milestone to make or anything like that. Yeah. But I was happy for them to take more time out of the game. So then we came to bat. And within, let me just find it. Yes, within 11.4 overs, we had lost more than half of the team, and we were 18 for 6. And the thing is, because West Indies have done so much stuff over the years that's terrible, I'm going to admit that even I was shocked by the 18 for 6. I feel like I've seen everything, but even I was watching going, but what's actually going on? Like, I'm trying to think of the dismissal. So Brathwaite tried to hoik one and got caught LBW in front, I think. Jermaine just gave his away. He thought he was playing a one-day innings. So he gave his away. Who was next after
Jermaine? Hope got castled.
Hope got castled. Chase, the gap between Chase's bat and pad was so huge. I don't even know what line Chase was playing down, but the gap was so huge. He got bowled through the gate. Mayers is one. I can't remember Mayers is one, you know. What happened to Mayers?
It skidded LBW. Yeah, he left it. He left it and it skidded.
And then I think Holder's one, in fairness, I thought was a good I thought that was a good dismissal.
Holder's one turned, but still, man, first ball. And you know what's mad? They were saying on commentary, Holder's had 5 ducks in his career, and all of them have been first ball ducks, which is like a record or something. But at that point, you know what, Mash? I couldn't even process it. The wickets fell so fast. Like the time between Chase, Mayers, and Holder was like 30 seconds, all of them being out. And I didn't even process it until afterwards, seeing that we were 18 for 6, the lowest ever score we've lost 6 wickets for. At this point, I was looking at the 47 all-time lowest score we made, thinking it was Mount Everest. Like, how are we gonna? Literally, I was thinking we genuinely were gonna break that record. But thank God, Bonner and De Silva had some sense about them and to kind of salvage it.
I was worried we'd get less than 47. And do you know what, Santoki? There's been a few times with West Indies, so ever since we created the podcast, where there's only been a few times. The 55 all out versus England was another one, where it's like, you know what? I'm going to just delete the Twitter account. And the 18 for 6 had me hovering over the delete button because I couldn't take the smoke that was going to come our way if we made history in another terrible.
You know what? The team was lucky that all the Caribbean uncles were fast asleep. You know, it was like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. Otherwise, boy, the reaction, man. But yeah, no, I think it was just, you know what though, it was. To be fair to Sri Lanka, from Mendes in particular, it was exceptional spin bowling. They sort of knew exactly what they needed to do. They had the momentum. But at the same time, West Indian batsmen, I don't know if they were mentally fatigued. It was as if they'd just given up. It was just, like you said, Blackwood's shot was just lazy to get out. There were some good balls, but like in the end, it just felt like, what are they doing? Top order batsmen for an international side are playing like this. And again, once again, the lower order, De Silva came in and showed you how you should play and navigate the spin on this pitch, which sort of embarrassed the top order.
So let's go in on the top order a little bit here, and I'm coming to Dino now. So Dino, Craig got a 40 in the first inning, so I'm going to leave Craig out of it for a bit because, as the opening batsman, so much, not that pressure is pressure, whatever, but a lot of pressure is on him in this West Indies side to always set a foundation, because we know that basically 2 to 6, anything could happen. So if Craig doesn't set a foundation, so the minute Craig got out for a duck, there couldn't have been any West Indian fan who wasn't thinking, uh-oh, here we go now, because nobody set any kind of foundation whatsoever. So in some ways, 18 for 6 shouldn't then have been a surprise. But I want to focus on two people in particular, right? And people are going to say you're always coming for them, but we have. In fact, let's bring Blackwood into it. It's a 3. Shea Hope's average in Test cricket is 25. 25. If you lot are going to cuss how Solozano has managed to get into a Test team with an average of 23 in domestic cricket, there has to be a serious question asked about Shea. Obviously, Shea's a fantastic batsman in ODI cricket. No one's denying that. And we shouldn't. I don't want to be one of those people who goes, oh, well, he's just come back and he's failed again. That's that. I'm not saying drop him. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, at what point do people look at the situation and go, Shea, your average is 25. Roston, your average is 27. Sorry, we're done now. And I'm not advocating that they do that, but at what point do we stop rotating the same players and say, well, you know what? Bring through Keegan Simmons or whoever. I'm just picking some random names. Bring through Kavem Hodge. Bring through whoever, right? At what point do you have to accept this just isn't working at the Test match level? And before anyone comes to me, I am not saying we must drop them right now in the middle of a Test series. I'm just intrigued to know at what point we ask the question. Dino.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack, but I would go with basically the second inning West Indies batting performance from there, and then I hear the points you're making, right? Where do we go from here is what you're asking. Just for the second inning, from the time losing Solozano and then, Craig going early, like you said, you hit the nail on the head. It's absolute panic time in the West Indies dressing room. What you need in those situations is just one guy to, like, if it was Pacers, just take hits for the team. That's what somebody needed to put their body on the line in that situation and just take it for the team and get some dot balls in, or even in that situation, Kyle Myers is a guy who has a different approach from other guys. He will take on that situation, right? Most of the top order guys don't do that. They have to get themselves in. So when Sri Lanka stifles you and you're already on the back foot in a second inning where you're so tentative, everything was against West Indies in that situation. And was it really surprised? Again, it's just the magnitude of the collapse is what is really surprising, showing now that we are completely exposed. It has completely exposed West Indies batting now if it hasn't before. And that's why you're asking about Chase average and Hope average. The truth is, Hope is one of the best batsmen in the Caribbean, right? And if Chase is doing something in Test cricket in bowling, then you need that. It may be in like, does Moeen Ali compare? I'm not sure, right? But in a lesser sense, I don't want to disrespect anybody, right? In terms of just cricket in general, with the Test team, it shows where the Test team is at, and it probably need to, where are the youngsters putting pressure then, right? Hetty, let me give you something. Hetty and Puran were, I know a lot of people mention it in the chat, Hetty and Puran, and you need these guys in Test cricket, right? Or even Evan Lewis would be, imagine you have these 3 guys in your Test team. That would be incredible. But how do you make that happen, and can it even happen? You need to blood guys from young. Like I know you mentioned Keegan Simmons. I have publicly said, based on stats and based on age and what he's done, I think Keegan Simmons is a guy who ticks a lot of the boxes. Is he the guy? I don't know. But you need a guy at 22 who's come through the under-19 to be in blooded, not Solozano at 26, 27, without a consistent 5 years in the 4-day and I checked the stats. Shane Mosley has better stats than him in recent times. So the Bajans have a genuine question there of why wasn't Shane Mosley picked. After we say stuff on this show, I always revisit it, and we continue the conversation on Twitter, Mash, and we always revisit it. We're not just saying things lightly here. This is a very serious show that players watch, and we know West Indies cricket watch it, right?
100%. And
Oh, it's raining. I don't know if you hear that.
No, I can't actually. But
Okay, cool.
I agree with you though. The point where, because this is the other thing actually, just going further on that point. And Richard Mutu, I see your point about Blackwood. I am going to come to it, but I'm just dealing with Dino's point here. And in fact, Clyde has just said we're stuck on a fixed lineup. Now, some of that's down to the lack of first-class cricket. Santoki tweeted on our handle today that allegedly, or it looks like, I think Santoki, the Guyana title, well, I can't remember what it was saying that Jamaica, Trinidad, and someone else is going to be hosting games, Barbados maybe, and the other franchise islands countries. So we look forward to some kind of first-class cricket happening in the new year. But Dino's wider point, I agree with. The actual core of the team now is actually late 20s to early 30s. Holder's 30. Like, I'm not saying that means he's old, but I am saying that these guys have been around a long time now. Craig, Jason, Dads, Shay, Roston, these guys all debuted around 2015. In fact, Craig was like 2012, so a bit earlier. But the point is, they've all come up now for the days of saying, well, they're a young team trying to make that. No. And what makes it even worse for me is Bonner, Mayers, Josh, just to take those three, all of them were in the top scorers in the last first-class season and rightly deserve their place off the back of that. They're the ones doing more to put up numbers regularly than the players who have been playing top-level international cricket since 2015, and it's not on. It's not on. It's not. And that's where I agree with Dino, that at this point now, you need to start looking at the 19 to 22-year-olds or 23-year-olds and saying, who out of you lot has the potential? In the same way how they've clearly looked at Jaden Seals and said, you know what, this guy has the potential at 19. Come through now, you, and let's develop you. They tried it with Alzari, he dropped off, but they're trying it with Jaden. Where are the batsmen? Yeah. Now, here's a name I'm going to throw to you. I'm not saying we must do it with him, but here's a name. Kamani Melius. So he was in the last under-19. I'm not saying he's ready. But what I am saying is he did well at the under-19 World Cup. I think he was the captain. He was the captain, I'm sure of it. He did well at the under-19 World Cup. In the same way how you identified Jaden and said, come on some camps, travel with us. Let me develop you in the nets. Surely, there must be a group of youngsters you can identify and say, come, we're going to, I can't even remember where we're going next year. We're going on tour to somewhere. Come through. You're going to just travel with us for the experience. And in the next, Santoki, you remember when England, Sven-Goran Eriksson, they took Theo Walcott just for the vibes?
Yeah.
To be around the squad.
Yeah.
I'm talking about that type of thing.
Yeah.
You take the young youths and say, come see what it's like.
Yeah, I agree. I think at this point, what have you really got to lose? Because we're at a point where, like you mentioned, the players like the Hopes and the Brathwaites, ironically, because they play Test cricket, they never get to go first class. They don't play a run of first class games, and they don't get to build that confidence up. They're just playing test to test where they're getting out for low scores. So their confidence is washed. Whereas, like, as you said, De Silva, Bonner, because they've got recent experience of big scores in first-class games, they've still got some sort of semblance of confidence, which they've brought along. But I agree. I think at this point, I mean, people were saying Kieran Powell should have come in for Hope. At this point, both of them have failed so many times. It's just a rotation system of failures. So what has West Indies, when we've got to a point where we're 18 for 6, what has West Indies got to lose by blooding in some youngsters like a Keegan Simmons or a Kamani Melius or someone like a Galle, for instance, bringing them in, getting them experience, getting them around the camp. And then if they can perform, they can't do much worse than the current players in the squad. At least they're long-term prospects who can at least learn from some of the older players in the squad and build on that. But it's something to consider, taking one or two quote-unquote emerging players along with the Test side just to get them involved in the 4-day game or in the Red Bull game.
So check this. Here's a joke, right? The same cussing loads of people gave the T20 side in the World Cup. You took too many experienced guys. They're too old now. You should have had like old Dean Smith and all these bunch of youngsters. I'm arguing that why aren't you lot using the same argument for the test side then? Yes, they're not as old, but in terms of experience in international cricket, they're just as experienced. The difference is the T20 guys have actually done it before. They've actually done something. They've actually won some competitions and proven it on the world stage. The current test squad, not all of them, but the core of them, they are experienced. So technically, the same argument should be running that, wait a minute, you're only there because you're experienced, but what are you actually doing? But we go back to Dino's point. Where are the youngsters putting pressure on them? But you could put that on the selectors and say, where's the long-term approach? Because clearly rotating these guys isn't necessarily reaping reward.
This is slightly off tangent, but there was a discussion on Twitter about, in terms of selectors as well, being transparent in saying, have they what has Pooran and Lewis said? Have they approached Pooran and Lewis, those kind of guys? Because at the moment, there's basically endless speculation about why isn't Pooran in the squad? Why isn't Lewis in the squad? Give them a shot. Whereas no one knows if they want to play Test cricket, if they've offered to play if possible, if the selectors feel they need to play domestic cricket more, what is the kind of position? So I feel that kind of transparency, because that, for me, obviously it's good to blood in youngsters, but for me, a more short-term solution, which could have long-term impact, is bringing in a Pooran, an experienced player in white ball cricket, and seeing if he can make the adjustment. But there's no transparency in terms of whether these players have been communicated with.
To be honest, Santoki, you could argue that we've done more to show transparency on that issue, because when we interviewed Evan Lewis, we just asked him straight. Now, how comes that we on our medium just put it straight to Evan and said, "I beg you, come play some red ball cricket"?
This is the thing. This is the thing. This is what, for me, it's weird, because Test cricket is seen as a purist game. So a lot of comments will say, "Oh, Pooran's only played 5 first-class games. Lewis hasn't played in 4 years. They can't play the holy Test cricket. They can't just come in like that." I'm saying, if Pooran and Lewis are in our top 6, we will never ever be 18 for 6. One of them will hit runs. I guarantee you that. Just based on their quality and talent, one of them will come through. So for me, how bad does the situation need to get where people finally admit we just need to throw players in who haven't got recent red ball experience, and just see if they can adjust to the international test level?
I see Dino wants to come in, so my final comment, because Dino, you see, Santoki and I are passionate about this one, but the one thing, I'm going to defend the selectors on one thing. In the Caribbean, you are damned if you do and damned if you don't. You see that day if they ever called in Pooran without any proper first-class cricket, people would cuss. Obviously, we'd be like, yeah, bring him in, because whatever, like, you might as well. But the majority, you'd see articles coming from Reds Pereira. You'd see articles. You'd see articles from certain islands saying, how did Pooran get in? What has happened to West Indies cricket where a man can just get in the test team and he ain't even played no red ball cricket? So they are damned if they do, and they are damned if they don't. Dino.
Yeah, I would jump on what you're saying on a broader perspective of everything you just said, is that there is a historical bias in some way towards Test cricket, of all these preconceived notions of what a Test cricketer is and what makes a Test cricketer in the modern game today, right? You put a criteria in place that says you have to play a domestic game. Okay, so if I come and play for Trinidad for one 4-day game, I'm in contention. Right? That's what you're saying. So what is the point of that then? What is the point of me, Kieron Pollard, playing one Trinidad game in the 4-day to be available for the 4-day team, for the test team, right? Does that make sense? Right? Or should I not just come to the trials best like everybody else if I'm Kieron Pollard? Right? So you have to be clear. You know, we mentioned communication last time, and this is a broader topic that you guys mentioned. You mentioned communication, right? And then West Indies cricket came in here, and the way that they communicated was just as generic as what we've seen from the selectors. All right. So, you know, we want to know clarify what's happened with John Campbell. Clarify, are you done with Kieron Powell? Because he's out there doing he's out there doing comms in Sri Lanka. Clarify is Solozano a long-term pick? Where was the marketing done on Solozano, a guy who was was about to debut for West Indies cricket. We would have loved to know more about him, and that's all about communication. We need to know what's happening, and if there are young guys on the radar, let's know what's happening. Look, I'm just saying it as it is. It's not to be controversial. Okay, news of tours are being announced. Of the 4-day season has been announced on a show, right? It wasn't announced via official release of West Indies cricket. A South Africa under 19 tour was announced via interview with Curtly Ambrose, right? This is all communication. And I just want to say, with the new breed, Curtly Ambrose and some other guys are there with the under 19 team. Have we heard anything out of this under 19 team in terms of who is the exciting young talent that we could look forward to? I'll tell you one, because he was there before. Teddy Bishop is a guy who I would say, who I've seen for 2 years in the under 19 system. He's back for 2 more now. So he's done 4 years in the under 19 system. Let's get this guy fast track. You know what I mean? That alone is one guy that I know in the system. I'm sure there's more. I know I said a lot, but it's about communication, guys. And I appreciate the communication.
100% Dino, man. And it's never a lot. You just heard us just going off on one. So it's all good, man. So anyways, West Indies 160 all out. We lost by 187 runs. First test match done. Over. We start our descent down to the bottom of the World Test Championship. we started well, but now we start our descent down the World Test Championship table. But second, there is no rest for the wicked. And Richard there just agreeing with Dino Reed Bishop looking good. But that again, Teddy Bishop just goes to my Jaden Seals point. Get him in, just get him traveling, get him in a camp. Sorry, I was going to say, yeah. So that the second test begins about 3 days from now, or starts on Monday. So, gentlemen, assuming Solozano passes some kind of concussion test, which is going to be interesting because technically, surely not enough time has passed for him to get. I would be shocked if he gets in, because I would have thought there's like a 10-day thing on concussion, because they announced it was concussion. So surely,
and especially because he had to go hospital, I don't know if he would clear medically. So I'd expect Hope to still play the second test. But also, Solozano has been picked, and he's not made the squad because of concussion. So technically, you have to put him back in. So it will be Solozano opening in the big England series, in my opinion, because you can't just drop him now.
No, yeah. Well, now he's here. He can't be dropped. So England, Solozano's coming. You know what? If there is a first-class season, even if Solozano makes like ducks in every single match, he still has to play in the England series because you've picked him. Surely you can't pick him not play, then just drop him.
Well, also, I'm not sure about legally. You can't drop someone from. I mean, you can, but I'm sure it's a grey area. You can't drop someone because they've got a concussion, basically. Like, he's had a concussion. That's the reason he hasn't played. It's not. You can't drop him because he's not got no form to drop him on. So on that basis, he's an automatic pick to open. So, boy, English media better look up Solozano, get writing those articles about him.
Well, do you know what? West Indies media better look up Solozano, because what articles have been written on
That's
Solozano
what I meant.
from anyone?
Thank you.
Thank you. I said to Dino earlier, or before the show, no other country in the world, no other nation in cricket will pick an opener for test debut, and nobody writes an article on them.
Not even one, Not even one. There's not even one. The first I heard of Solozano proper, like he did have a press conference.
Yeah,
there was a West Indies press conference, and he was on there, and there was about 5 men in it. That was it, and I was like, you know what? Surely this only happens in the West Indies.
And the thing is, so the first class season is going to start in February, according to, as Dino said, was officially announced on a radio show in the Caribbean rather than through a release. February, it's going to start February. The England series starts the first week of March. So you would assume the first class season wouldn't have any bearing on squad selection for the test. So realistically, the majority of this squad in Sri Lanka are going to be playing against England.
No, that can't happen. That actually can't happen, though. Like,
because if you play one first class game and you fire, that surely can't be a basis to just get fast tracked into the test team based on selection logic.
I'm going to call one name. right? One name only that I think that can leapfrog over everyone straight into the test squad with no cricket is Hetmeyer. Now, because we have to remember with Hetmeyer that when COVID happened, Hetmeyer was actually in the test team. But remember, Hetmeyer didn't want to go to England because obviously we were the number one plague island at the height of COVID. And Hetmeyer said, no, I'm not going. Bravo said he won't go in. There are a few people who opted out. You see, ever since Hetmeyer opted out of that, he's been finished, you know. So technically, Hetmeyer never really got dropped. He opted out of a tour. He opted out of Bangladesh as well, and he just never got his place back. Now, do not get me wrong. I'm not trying to claim that Shimron Hetmeyer is the best test batsman we've got. His average is 28. Like, come on, they're all the same. But the difference is Shimron Hetmeyer's upside is higher than most of them. So technically, I shouldn't have to see Shimron Hetmeyer play play a red ball game to bring him back into the test squad, because technically think outside of the box and say, well, he's been playing some ODI cricket for West Indies, so he is actually playing some cricket. He's previously been in the test squad. A bunch of these men ain't making no runs. Shimron's at least made runs at test level, come back in. But again, people would cuss. Guyana would party, people would cuss as to how Hetmeyer just got straight back in again.
Yeah, 100%. But what I would like to see is obviously the white ball squad are touring India. They come back in February, like late February. There's a small gap there where they could play one. I'd like to see a Puran just rock up for Trinidad, play one game, and on that basis qualify for making the test side. I don't think it will happen. I think realistically, I don't even think Hetmeyer will make the test squad for England, purely because he's only going to be playing white ball games up until that period. And I don't think he'll play any first-class games before that. So for me, realistically, 3/4, if not more, of this squad in Sri Lanka will be facing England. And that's because the criteria has been set. You have to be playing domestic red ball cricket to make the side.
But then we need to say and ask this question: is the selection criteria fit for purpose?
We need to get Roger Harper on the show.
Given the West Indies talent pool, is our selection criteria fit for purpose? We do not have a large enough pool to justify excluding people. We don't have enough of a talent. Sorry, when I say talent, we've got raw talent, but we don't have enough established talent at the highest level to justify this selection process. But also, boy, you see, when we lose, it's always a long show. But also, in defense of this current squad, they're the ones who make runs in best versus best. So there's also an argument to say, what are we supposed to do? So just to remind people, in that game in Antigua, because Holder and Chase were obviously at the World Cup, but just to remind people, in that game in Antigua, these were because I made sure to go and look it up again before the show. These were the standouts. Bonner got 166. Brathwaite got 78 and 58. Solizano got 71. Hope got 100 not out and 70 odd not out. Blackwood got a 50. Cornwall got a 50. Cornwall got the most wickets. So we can cuss, but do you know what I mean? They're the ones performing in these games. So what are we supposed to do? Dino, anything to say on that?
Oh yeah, I have a lot to say on that because the entire 4-day system for me, I don't want to say a radical thinker, but it definitely requires now a bit of investigating into this 4-day system that we currently have. I know we've been hit by COVID, right? Well, let me just address the selectors thing. The COVID period maybe throws that idea of having to play 4-day to play for the test team out the window, at least temporarily. So, just because of situational bubbles and stuff, I would think that it makes logical sense that for a temporary reason, because our 4-day has been affected, that you could, for the short term, lift that selection policy, right? That's just outside the box thinking. I don't know if that's too radical or not. All right, based on that's just a situational thing. But going forward, you have to look at the 4-day system and is it making sense? And you have to look at the 4-day too. A lot of people don't know about financially how much of a chunk of West Indies money goes into the 4-day, right? Mm-hmm. I think it is a significant amount. So you have to think about, look, I would just put the thought out there because I always say it. I think it's demand and supply for tests. If we do less tests, if we're gonna do less tests, the demand will rise because no one comes to the stadiums. How much is our TV rights worth when we play anyone? right? And I want to just take that forward one step to say again that we should just aim to beat England home and away in tests. And if that's our goal, that will literally put bread on the table of West Indies people if we can beat England. That is as literal as it is, right? We want to play 5 and 6 tests against England like they do against Australia. We want to be competitive, 5 T20s, 5 ODIs, and 5 tests against England. That should be our goal. I know I got a bit ahead of myself, but if the 4-day system could bring the England Lions here as part of our tour, and if the winning team of the 4-day competition could tour England afterward, that's his solutions right there.
I hear that. I definitely hear that one. So just wrapping up our ideas on selection. So Solozano, if we say Solozano's not fit, Hope comes in. Should Santoki Hope to open in the second test if Solozano's not available? Or does Jermaine stay there?
I think they'll go with Jermaine. I think they'll have to protect Hope, give him one more shot at 4, because he'll be saying, no doubt to the coaches, 4 is my optimal position, and they'll think long term, okay, if he performs well, he could be our number 4. So I think they'll go with Blackwood as opener and just essentially sacrifice him so Hope can play number 4 again.
Dino, because the rest of the team I think kind of writes itself. The only other question marks I've got is, would you rotate Shannon out for one of Roach or Seals?
Yeah, definitely rotate the Pacers. That's not a surprise. That's happening for sure. I would love to see Solozano be okay to start. That's it. I will go from there. If not, it's a patch job and someone has to take up the mantle. It will probably be Blackwood again, right? But hopefully with the concussion stuff, that Solo is okay so that we can see him in these conditions in the second game.
And then Santoki, back to you. Having seen what Sri Lanka's spinners did to us, would you drop a batsman? So then Holder would go up to 6, Josh to 7, Rakeem to 8. Would you drop a batsman and bring in Permo?
No, I wouldn't, because I don't think Permo would be effective enough with the lack of preparation. I just think you'd essentially just have another ineffective spinner and lose that sort of batting depth, especially if it's Mayers going.
Do you know any place for Permo?
Maybe for Cornwall if they're feeling to take that risk. That's the only thing.
So people, I mean, you've seen what we've said. Very few of us believe there'll be any changes. I personally would like to see Permo in. I'd like to see us put more spinners in the team. But again, I'm with Dino and Santoki. I don't necessarily see that happening. And then obviously, then it's just about, is Solozano fit or not? If Solozano's fit, then Hope has to come out. If Solozano isn't fit, then it's just whether they decide to make Jermaine open again. So lastly, people, it's been a bumper show for you. But the last thing we're going to do, Santoki and I do this quite a bit whenever we tend to do it whenever there's been something rubbish. But of course, we got to do the player ratings. Now, people, when we say the players, you two chuck in your ratings. You lot never sometimes agree with what me and Santoki say, but we're going to go through it all the same. So straight from the top, I've lost my scorecard. So Craig Brathwaite first, 40-something in the first innings and a duck in the second innings. Plus, you've got to think about his captaincy as well, use of the bowlers, etc. Santoki, Craig Brathwaite. 6.
I think first innings was decent. I don't think his captaincy was sort of what you've expected. I don't think he was terrible. His moves, he sort of done what was logical. Second innings disappointing, but yeah, I'd say 6 overall.
Dino, Craig.
5.6. Yeah, just above average. Did the job as captain. Did the job in one inning. So 5, just above average.
I'm going 41 and a duck. 4.5. 5, I guess. 5.
Okay, 5.
5 for Craig there. Jermaine Blackwood forced to open 20 in the first innings, 9 in the second innings.
I'd say 3.5 or 4. I'll give him a 4 because it's not his usual position, but for me, he didn't do it. The second innings in particular, he gave his wicket away. So for me, it's a 4.
Dino.
4. Same. I agree. 100%. Okay. It's interesting to see the comments go just light up with people. I see some low scores coming through here, but all right.
I think I'm going to give him 3.5. He's put in an unfamiliar position, but the second innings he gave that away, and that was criminal given the situation. So 3.5. Who was number 3? Oh, Bonner. So 1 in the first innings, and then 68 not out in the second innings off 220 balls.
I give it a 7. Obviously, heavily weighted for the second innings in the context of the game. First innings disappointing, but the whole side was. So yeah, 7.
6. Easy.
I might go 7 here because that was the top score from any West Indian in across the 2 innings. But I'm more given the 7 for the 220 balls faced than the actual 68 because I think he has shown the template for what needs to happen in the second test. And to be honest, if we lose and I'm cussing in the second test, I'm going to be cussing anybody who couldn't bat over like 50 balls. Like there is no excuse to not just at least put some kind of price on your wicket. So I'll give a 7 for Bonner in the context of a poor performance. Shea Hope came in as a concussion sub, 10 in the first innings, 3 in the second innings.
1.
Oh my God! No one is getting above average for me except except Bonner and De Silva. Everyone is going to be below average. It's just how harshly do you rate him? Hope I just want to talk on Hope because he wasn't going to start, which I don't understand, and then he's forced in at 4, and then he doesn't perform. I think if he was going to start anyway, we had a lot of expectations on you. Hope 2. I'm just giving you 2 for that one. I wouldn't break down each one like that.
Because he got into double figures, I'll give him a 1. So he can get a 1. Roston Chase.
You know what's funny? As a batsman, he scored 2 and 1. So you're looking at minus
2 in the first innings, 1 in the second innings, but 5 for 83 in the first innings. What are we saying for Roston?
Has to be a 4 for the bowling.
It's a test match 5, so
yeah, it's a test match.
Can't be discounted.
So I'd give him a 4 because, like you said, he was chosen primarily as a batsman. He put up 3 runs across both innings, but then his bowling essentially salvaged the first innings for us. So I give 4.
Yeah, 4.
0 with the bat, 5 with the. No, you can't give 5 with them. Overall, I have to give a 5. It's a test match 5 for you can't, and it's a good test match 5. It's not like 5 for 170 or something. It's 5 for 83. So I've got to give a 5. But you see that batting? I ain't forgotten it. I ain't forgotten. Jamel. Oh no, not Jamel. Kyle Mayers 45 in the first innings, and was it 1 or a duck? 2 in the second innings.
I give it a 4.
3 for me.
He was the top scorer in the first innings, so I guess I have to give it a 4 minimum. Just for being the top scorer. And it was a good counter-attacking innings at a time when we were looking to try and get bowled out for 150. So I guess I've got to respect that. He can get a 4. Jason Holder, economical with the ball, arguably our best bowler in that first. No, he didn't take wickets, but like, where is it? Let me find those. Stats again because it's very impressive. 19 overs, none for 24. So very economical with the ball. With the bat in the first innings, he made 36. Second innings, he made. Oh, he got a duck.
It's a 4 for me because, like you said, you wouldn't expect him to take wickets, particularly as rolling aside and on this pitch. But he's economical. First innings, in the context, was a decent innings to salvage us as well, lower down the order. So I give him a 4.
Yeah, 4 for me.
Yeah, so the duck has to 3.5, maybe a 4. Yeah, it's one of those two. Josh De Silva, 15 not out in the first innings off 90 odd balls, 94 balls, and then 54 off 129 balls in the second innings. Did he take any catches or stumpings in the match? Two stumpings. Josh De Silva.
I give him an 8. More so, the scores were good, but just like you said, the role he played in soaking up balls and behind the stumps, he had a good match overall. I know it wasn't exceptional, but he's improved behind the stumps as well. So for me, it'd be an 8.
Yeah, in that team he could be 11 with that performance. But yeah, I would say 7. Given taking context overall, the performance was really poor, so that drops everything. So I would say 7 for me.
Yeah, I might give a 7.5 because actually there's an argument to say that he's actually the only consistent person in across the whole Test match. He was definitely better behind the stumps than he was in Bangladesh for me personally, and I think his keeping has improved at the international level. And like I say, not out in the first innings, and then a solid half century. Of the only 2 batsmen got a half century, so I'll give him a 7.5. Some people are saying 10, but we can't give a 10 because the overall team performance was awful. So no one's allowed to go any higher than like a 7.5 or 8. Who's after Josh? Jamel Warrican. 2 awful reviews. I had to say that. 3 for 87 in the first innings, 32 overs, 2.71 economy. And then 5 wickets in the match, 2 for 42 in the second match, in the second innings. Sorry.
For me, I know he took the same amount of wickets as Chase, but because he was chosen primarily as the specialist spinner, it has to be a 3 for me. Very disappointing from Warwick. Didn't do anything with the bat you wouldn't expect him to, but in terms of being a frontline spinner, didn't do the job you would expect in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I agree. I would do the same thing. 3.
I'm going to go 4 because he still did take 5 wickets. Granted, he's supposed to be taking 5 wickets, but I'll give him a 4 as a result. Certainly didn't bowl as well as you'd expect for someone who was a frontline spinner. Neither him or Cornwall should be getting out bowled by Chase, basically. Which brings us to Rakeem Cornwall. So Rakeem Cornwall, 2 for 60 in the second innings, none in the first innings for 91 of 27 overs. To give him his due, he was a bit unlucky. There were a few that he could have got wickets for. Sometimes Rakeem gets a bit too much bounce because of just how he bowls. But anyways, with the bat in the first innings, he made 39, coming in at number 10. And in the second innings, he gave it away, but made 13.
I give him a 4, primarily for the batting, which he wasn't picked in the side for. But in the context of the rest of the side, he performed well with the bat, got 2 wickets, disappointing with the ball, so overall averaged out to 4.
Yeah, sorry, Stino, sorry.
No, 3 for me. But the only thing with Cornwall is, even though he went wicketless, one of his key roles is bowling in partnerships with the other bowlers, which he does really well on lockdown end. But I still think he is a guy that you could, if you're looking at the future, he's one that you could probably look at second game, give Cornwall a run. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think Cornwall for me is the inverse of Chase. So Chase, yeah, you got your 5-fer, but you're picked to bat. Cornwall got 39 and 13, but you're picked to bowl. So it's for me, it's somewhere between a 3.5 and a 4 because he didn't do his primary suit. So yeah, it's a difficult one because the 39 was actually crucial in getting us up to 230. So, but yeah, he didn't complete his primary suit. Shannon Gabriel, not many people saw him being in the side, but there's an argument to say in the first innings, 2 for 69 off 19 overs. So on a deck that didn't give many wickets to pace, he took the most from a pacer. Second innings, he only bowled 4 overs, and obviously, as is the case, never does anything with the bat. Gabriel, and more importantly, as Coolio just said, he didn't break down at any point in the match. Didn't look like he was gonna break down at any point in the match. Granted, he was only used in like 3 or 4 over spells. But anyways, Gabriel.
A 2 for me. I know obviously he was a pacer, you're not expected to get a 5 for it in Sri Lanka. But considering he only bowled 4 overs in the second innings, he doesn't contribute anything with the bat. So if you're looking at it from that point of view as an isolated thing, he took 2 wickets in the match. So I'd give it a 2.
Yeah, 3 for me. When was the last time he played a test match? I'm not sure, but 3 for me. Will he play in the next one? I'm not sure, but good to see him out there. But I would have liked to see the Pacers use more in the game, just in the second inning to attack.
Yeah, I think 2 and 3 is a bit harsh there, but I also understand why he said it. And actually, it's worth saying that one of the wickets was because can't even remember which batsman it was. Remember they smashed down their own wicket. But
listen, this is the level of West Indian cricket is people are giving him a high rating for not breaking down. You know, what is the bar we set for ourselves?
people are going 5. No one even cares if he took any wickets or did anything. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna say 3.5 or 4 or something like that. But I'm with Dino. I'm not sure he's gonna play in the team for the second test. So, people, that's the player ratings. This is the longest show we've ever done. So this is the longest show we've ever done. Thank you for those who've been with us the whole time. We never planned to go as long as we do. As usual, do share it with your people. Dino said something to me the other day. He was like, this is the only show in the Caribbean that has people whose heritage or island country of birth is so varied. We've got lots of things in the Caribbean, but they tend to be very specific to a particular country or island. You won't get that with this show. Your comments are just as valued to us as anything that we've got to say. We got a Jamaican, a Guyanese, and a Trini. You know, we keep it as diverse and as balanced as we possibly can. So spread the word. Let people know about Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Smash the like, smash the subscribe. We'll just get the word out there. You know, we'll be back for the second test match. We'll be getting up again early and doing all of that jazz. And we do what we can only ever do. We rally. For those who have forgotten, though, remember West Indies women are trying to qualify for the World Cup, so stay locked onto what they're doing. They look like they'll be fine, but stay locked onto what they're doing as well. This isn't just about the West Indies men's team. And yeah, big up everyone who's been in the live. Last comments go to Santoki and Tina.
Yeah, no, good unraveling. Like you said, it's been a long episode, lot to unravel after what was a disappointing test. When you think coming into it, we were cautiously optimistic West Indies could do something, so it all unraveled. But as always, a pleasure to analyze it with you two guys. Dino, thanks for coming on and sharing some of your wisdom as well. And like Michelle said to everyone, share it, spread the word, get people involved with the movement. And I'll leave the final word to Dino.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's been, a longer one than usual, but that's because the fans are still here interacting with us, keeping it going. So I want to just say a big shout out to everyone who joined us for this entire time. There's been a lot of you listening in, and you are the ones who make this show possible. So when the guys say share and like, please do that. And if you're seeing it for the first time, a lot of you wouldn't be live, so you see it for the first time. Continue the conversations that we've had here in the comments, because you're not part of the live comments, which we love, but we would still love to hear your opinions going forward and keep the conversations going for next time. Always a pleasure to be here, and big up to these two guys who make it possible. Respect, man.
100. And people, remember, Dino's @ is on the screen, @CritDino on Twitter. We're at Carib Cricket. And remember, you can also, anyone who's watching this back who wasn't there live, you can comment in the actual YouTube comments, and we always get back to people who comment there. And we'll have some podcast episodes coming out over the next few weeks. And so stay locked in. And as ever, rally round the West Indies. Now, people, I'm going to try and play out on our video. Let's see if I can make this work. So let me try and be professional. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We've been the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.